The Galactic Council chambers hummed with the low-frequency resonance that all member species could perceive, a carefully engineered harmony that had taken 3 centuries to perfect. Today, however, that harmony would be shattered by arrogance masquerading as logic. War Minister Velter of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the central podium, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's ambient light into prismatic patterns that danced across the assembled delegates. His silicon-based physiology thrived in the controlled environment of the station, cool, dry, with atmospheric pressure calibrated to accommodate the galaxy's most civilized species. To Velter, this artificial perfection represented the pinnacle of evolution, complete mastery over one's environment. Honored delegates, Velter's voice carried the crystalline chime that characterized his species. We gather today to address a classification error that has persisted for far too long. The holographic display above him materialized Earth, rotating slowly in 3-dimensional space. The world designated Terra by its inhabitants, classified as a Class 7 Deathworld by this very council 57 standard years ago. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Altarian delegates' tentacles twitched with curiosity, while the vegan representatives' compound eyes focused with mechanical precision on the display. Only the Kethri delegation remained silent, their ancient forms motionless in meditation-like stillness that suggested either deep thought or profound concern. Velter's confidence radiated from every facet of his crystalline structure as he continued. My research teams have conducted extensive analysis of human behavior and physiology. The evidence is irrefutable. Humanity's so-called Deathworld classification is nothing more than elaborate propaganda designed to inflate their perceived threat level. Holographic Earth dissolved, replaced by images of human space stations, orbital habitats, and generation ships. Observe their construction requirements, Velter gestured with one of his 4 articulated arms. Artificial gravity systems, atmospheric processors, temperature regulation, humidity control. These are not the hallmarks of a species adapted to hostile environments. These are the desperate measures of a fragile race that cannot survive without technological intervention. The Altarian delegate's translator vocalizer crackled to life. War Minister, human military capabilities suggest otherwise. Their expansion rate and territorial acquisition indicate significant aggressive potential. Velter's form brightened with what his species expressed as amusement. Honored Altarian, aggression born of desperation is not the same as natural predatory instinct. Humans fight because they must, not because they can. Remove their technology, place them in truly hostile conditions, and they become what they truly are, frightened creatures seeking shelter from the storm. The holographic display shifted again, showing comparative physiological data. Human bone density, insufficient for high-gravity environments. Muscle-to-mass ratio, adequate only with technological augmentation. Sensory capabilities, limited to a narrow spectrum requiring artificial enhancement for space operations. Thermal tolerance, requiring constant environmental modification for survival. Velter paused, allowing his words to settle among the assembly like sediment in still water. His next statement would echo through history, though not in the way he intended. A species that cannot survive without climate control poses no threat to those who have conquered the void itself. The vote proceeded with mechanical efficiency. 847 delegates supported the Zephyrian proposal for Earth's reclassification from Deathworld to standard habitable with hostile subspecies. 12 opposed, mostly newer member species who had limited direct contact with humans. The Kethri abstained entirely, their delegate speaking only once during the proceedings. We have studied their historical records. We recommend caution. Velter dismissed the warning with the casual arrogance that had characterized Zephyrian expansion for 3 millennia. History would record this moment as the precise instant when that expansion began its catastrophic reversal. 12 light-years away, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the Pacific Northwest Research Station, watching her daughter Emma splash through sulfur-tinted pools with the unconscious grace of a child born to an environment most galactic species would consider toxic. The hyperspace communication array had just delivered the Council's ultimatum: submit to Zephyrian administration or face military occupation. Sarah's expertise in extremophile biology had brought her family to this remote outpost, where they studied organisms that thrived in conditions that would kill most known life forms. The research station perched on the edge of an active volcanic system, built into the mountainside like a technological barnacle attached to the Earth's raw, violent geology. To Sarah, it represented humanity's greatest strength, the ability to find life flourishing in the most impossible places. To the approaching Zephyrian fleet, it would represent something entirely different. Emma Chen, 12 years old and oblivious to galactic politics, possessed an intimate understanding of her environment that no amount of academic study could replicate. She had been born during a minor eruption, her first breaths taken in air thick with volcanic ash. Her childhood playground consisted of hot springs, mineral deposits, and geological formations that shifted with each earthquake. She knew which sulfur pools were safe for swimming by their color, could predict minor tremors by the behavior of the station's seismic monitoring equipment, and considered a magnitude 4 earthquake to be an exciting diversion during math class. The other children at the station shared similar adaptations. Marcus Volkov, 14, son of the station's chief geologist, could navigate the underground lava tube system in complete darkness, using only changes in air pressure and mineral scent to guide him. The twins Keiko and Akira Nakamura, 10 years old, had inherited their atmospheric scientist parents' intuitive understanding of pressure systems and could predict weather patterns by subtle changes in humidity and temperature that escaped the station's instruments. Dmitry Petrov, 13, had spent so many years helping his volcanologist father that he could identify different types of volcanic rock by touch and knew instinctively which chemical combinations would produce spectacular but harmless reactions. To these children, the research station wasn't a dangerous outpost on the edge of habitability. It was home, as familiar and safe as any suburban neighborhood. This fundamental disconnect between human and alien perception would prove decisive in the coming conflict. Commander Ralvin of the Zephyrian Warfleet emerged from hyperspace with the confidence of a species that had conquered 40 worlds without significant resistance. His fleet of 200 vessels represented overwhelming technological superiority: energy weapons capable of sterilizing continents, shields that could deflect nuclear weapons, and troop transport capacity for 50,000 soldiers equipped with environmental suits designed for the harshest conditions known to galactic civilization. The emergence timing, however, proved immediately problematic. Hurricane Olivia, a Category 5 storm system spanning half the Pacific Ocean, was making landfall along the North American coast with winds exceeding 150 miles per hour. The Zephyrian environmental sensors registered the phenomenon with alarm: atmospheric pressure variations that would crush their respiratory systems, precipitation levels that would flood their breathing apparatus, and electromagnetic interference from the storm's electrical activity that played havoc with their navigation systems. Ralvin studied the meteorological data with growing confusion. Navigation officer, confirm our coordinates. This cannot be the correct planetary location. Coordinates confirmed, Commander. This is the system designated Sol, planet designated Terra. Then explain these atmospheric readings. According to our intelligence, this planet supports a population of 8 billion humans. The navigation officer's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. Perhaps the humans have evacuated the affected regions. These conditions appear incompatible with organic life. Ralvin accepted this explanation because it aligned with his preconceptions. Surely no intelligent species would remain in such conditions by choice. The hurricane would provide excellent cover for the invasion, as human populations would be huddled in shelters waiting for the storm to pass. The first landing craft descended through wind shear that would have torn apart any Zephyrian atmospheric vehicle not specifically designed for extreme conditions. The soldiers within, encased in environmental suits rated for vacuum operations and toxic atmosphere survival, monitored their external sensors with growing alarm as humidity levels climbed to percentages they had never encountered on any conquered world. Sergeant Corthen led the Advanced Reconnaissance Unit onto the Oregon coastline during what humans would classify as merely rough weather. The wind speed, while concerning, remained within their equipment's operational parameters. The temperature registered 15 degrees Celsius, well within the tolerable range for Zephyrian physiology when properly protected. The humidity, however, immediately began compromising their life support systems. Command, this is Advanced Scout 7. Environmental suits experiencing technical difficulties. Atmospheric moisture exceeding filtration capacity. Ralvin's response crackled through the interference. Acknowledged, Scout 7. Maintain position and adapt filtration protocols. Human settlements should be abandoned during this weather phenomenon. Sergeant Corthen advanced along the coastline, his suit's sensors painting a picture of environmental hostility that defied his understanding of habitability. The ocean waves, driven by hurricane winds, reached heights of 20 feet or more, creating walls of water that moved with sufficient force to crush Zephyrian architecture. The sound alone, a constant roar of wind and wave, would have driven his species to madness within hours. Then he saw them, human beings, not huddled in shelters, not cowering from the storm, but actively engaging with it. Dozens of humans rode the massive waves on primitive boards, their unprotected bodies exposed to conditions that were slowly killing Corthen despite his advanced protective equipment. They moved through the churning water with fluid grace, their faces expressing not terror but pure exhilaration. Corthen's first casualty report came not from enemy action, but from the fundamental incompatibility between Zephyrian physiology and Earth's environment. War leader Velthos drowned in 3 inches of accumulated rainwater after his environmental suit's humidity processor failed. His crystalline respiratory system, unable to extract usable atmosphere from the water-saturated air. The secondary landing force, tasked with securing the abandoned research facility, descended toward coordinates that their sensors indicated as particularly hazardous. Elevated sulfur compounds, seismic instability, and thermal variations suggested an industrial accident or natural disaster in progress. The facility would certainly be evacuated, making it an ideal staging area for expansion operations. Lieutenant Zarvel led the facility investigation team, their environmental suits specifically configured for toxic atmosphere operations. The sulfur dioxide levels would have been lethal to most galactic species within minutes, while the humidity made their equipment struggle with every breath. As they approached the research station, Zarvel noticed something that challenged his understanding of the tactical situation. Lights. The facility was clearly occupied and operational. Command, this is Investigation Team 3. Target facility shows signs of active habitation despite extreme environmental hazards. Explain, Lieutenant. Atmospheric readings show sulfur dioxide at 15 parts per million, humidity at 80%, ambient temperature 23 degrees with localized thermal variations up to 60 degrees near geothermal sources. Seismic sensors detect constant minor tremor activity. Yet the facility appears fully operational with multiple life signs detected. Ralvin processed this information through the filter of his preconceptions. Clearly, the humans were trapped by the environmental conditions, unable to evacuate safely. This presented an opportunity for the Zephyrians to demonstrate their superior capabilities by offering rescue services, which would facilitate smoother occupation procedures. The investigation team approached the facility's main entrance, where their sensors detected a small human approaching their position. Zarvel tensed, expecting to encounter a desperate survivor seeking rescue from the toxic environment. Instead, he found himself facing an 8-year-old girl wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and sandals, carrying what appeared to be a primitive food preparation. "Hi," the child said with obvious enthusiasm. "Are you okay? You look really uncomfortable in those suits. Do you want a sandwich?" Zarval stared at the child through his suit's visual sensors, his mind struggling to process the information. This juvenile human was not only surviving but thriving in conditions that were slowly overwhelming his military-grade protective equipment. She showed no signs of environmental stress, no indication that she considered her surroundings hazardous, and appeared genuinely concerned for his welfare. The cultural shock rippled through the investigation team. They had prepared for resistance, evacuation, or desperate pleas for rescue. They had not prepared for a small human offering them food while standing barefoot on ground that registered as chemically toxic to their sensors. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived moments later, having detected the alien presence through the facility's early warning systems. She approached the Zephyrian soldiers with the careful diplomacy of someone who understood that first contact situations could escalate rapidly, while simultaneously fighting the surreal nature of the encounter. Her daughter was attempting to feed an alien invasion force like they were stray cats. "I'm Dr. Chen, the facility's xenobiological research director," she addressed the suited figures. "Can I help you?" Zarval's translator struggled with the concept. These humans were not behaving like refugees or desperate survivors. They were acting like hosts welcoming unexpected guests to their home. The disconnect between expectation and reality left him fumbling for appropriate protocols. We are here to establish Zephyrian administrative control over this facility, for your protection." Sarah's expression shifted to confusion. Protection from what? From the environmental hazards. The toxic atmosphere, the geological instability, the extreme conditions that threaten organic life. Emma Chen, still holding her sandwich offering, piped up with the innocent directness that only children possess. "Mr. Robot, this isn't extreme. This is just normal. The really scary stuff happens when the mountain gets grumpy." Sarah winced at her daughter's phrasing while Zarval tried to process the implications. The child was suggesting that current conditions, which were straining Zephyrian equipment to its limits, represented normal environmental parameters. The reference to the mountain getting grumpy presumably indicated even more severe conditions that these humans considered survivable. The occupation began with the surreal politeness that characterizes encounters between beings operating under completely different assumptions about reality. The Zephyrians, convinced they were conducting a humanitarian rescue operation, began establishing a base camp in what their environmental specialists identified as the safest possible location, a dormant volcanic crater approximately 2 kilometers from the research facility. Commander Ralvin selected this site because it offered excellent defensive positioning, protection from seismic activity, and appeared geologically stable according to Zephyrian survey protocols. The fact that it was designated as dormant, rather than extinct, in human geological surveys represented a critical translation error that would have devastating consequences. The Zephyrian occupation force treated the human adults with the frustrated patience typically reserved for disaster victims suffering from shock-induced irrationality. Dr. Chen's insistence that the research facility was perfectly safe, that the current environmental conditions were within normal parameters, and that evacuation was unnecessary clearly indicated psychological trauma induced by prolonged exposure to toxic conditions. The children, meanwhile, were classified as non-threatening and largely ignored. Zephyrian military doctrine, developed through the conquest of 40 worlds, focused on neutralizing adult populations capable of organized resistance. Juvenile specimens were considered irrelevant to occupation operations until they matured sufficiently to pose potential threats. This proved to be the single greatest tactical error in Zephyrian military history. Emma Chen, freed from adult supervision by her parents' detention for psychological evaluation and treatment, began what she would later describe to her friends as the most awesome game of hide-and-seek ever. Her intimate knowledge of the volcanic cave system, developed through years of exploration with her father during his geological surveys, provided her with three-dimensional tactical advantages that no amount of alien technology could overcome. The lava tube network that honeycombed the mountain represented a transportation system invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Emma could travel from the research facility to the alien base camp through routes that existed in perfect darkness, guided by air currents that carried the subtle chemical signatures of different geological formations. What the aliens perceived as solid rock, Emma knew as a highway system carved by ancient volcanic activity. Marcus Volkov joined Emma's resistance effort with the methodical precision inherited from his geologist father. His understanding of seismic patterns allowed him to predict minor earthquakes with sufficient accuracy to plan tactical operations around them. To Marcus, a magnitude 4 tremor wasn't a natural disaster. It was a scheduled event that could be used to mask movement or create diversions. The twins Keiko and Akira brought their atmospheric knowledge to the group, understanding pressure differentials and weather patterns with an intuition that bordered on supernatural. They could predict when the volcanic gases would shift direction, when humidity levels would spike to equipment-threatening levels, and when thermal inversions would create visibility problems for alien surveillance systems. Dmitry Petrov contributed his encyclopedic knowledge of volcanic chemistry, accumulated through years of helping his volcanologist mother collect samples from active thermal features. He understood which mineral deposits could be safely handled, which chemical combinations would produce spectacular but harmless reactions, and how to weaponize the environment itself using nothing more advanced than elementary school chemistry. Together, these children represented something unprecedented in galactic military history, an indigenous resistance force with environmental adaptation capabilities that exceeded their opponents' technological countermeasures. The first sabotage operation targeted the Zephyrian base camp's water recycling system during a minor rainfall event. To humans, the precipitation represented a light drizzle barely worth mentioning in weather reports. To the Zephyrians, it created atmospheric humidity levels that pushed their life support systems beyond operational parameters. Emma and Keiko infiltrated the base perimeter through a lava tube that emerged inside the volcanic crater, providing direct access to the alien encampment. Using tools stolen from the research facility's maintenance workshop, a simple pipe wrench and a screwdriver, they located the central atmospheric processing unit and systematically damaged its humidity extraction mechanisms. The sabotage went undetected until the rain began. As atmospheric moisture levels climbed from tolerable to dangerous to critical, the damaged recycling system failed catastrophically. 15 Zephyrian soldiers were incapacitated by what humans would consider light drizzle, their crystalline respiratory systems unable to extract usable atmosphere from air saturated with water vapor. Commander Ralvin's first indication of organized resistance came not from sensor alerts or perimeter alarms, but from the medical bay's overflow capacity. His environmental specialists reported system failures consistent with extreme atmospheric conditions, yet their meteorological equipment registered only minor precipitation. The disconnect suggested either massive equipment malfunction or deliberate sabotage. Security Chief, initiate perimeter scanning protocols. We may be dealing with human resistance activities. Acknowledged, Commander. Deploying reconnaissance teams to investigate potential hostile actions. The reconnaissance teams found no evidence of adult human activity. The research facility remained under guard, its population accounted for and contained. The base camp perimeter showed no signs of forced entry, no indication of technological infiltration, no traces of the sophisticated equipment necessary to conduct precision sabotage operations. What they did find were small footprints in the volcanic ash, leading from the lava tube network to their critical systems and back again. The tracks were too small to belong to adult humans and appeared to have been made by individuals wearing primitive foot coverings. The implications challenged every assumption about human resistance capabilities. The second major engagement occurred when Lieutenant Zarvel led a patrol into the Hot Springs region, following reports of unusual human activity in an area that registered as thermally hazardous. The patrol approached the springs wearing full environmental protection, their suits' thermal regulation systems working at maximum capacity to protect them from ambient temperatures that reached 40 degrees Celsius. Emma Chen emerged from the steaming water like a creature from their nightmares, her unprotected human physiology completely unaffected by temperatures that would have killed any Zephyrian within minutes. She was not alone. 5 other children surfaced from various pools, their casual comfort in conditions that registered as literally boiling to Zephyrian sensors, representing a display of environmental adaptation that bordered on the supernatural. "Hi again," Emma called out with cheerful enthusiasm. "Wanna come swimming? The water's really nice today." Zarval's squad found themselves in the unprecedented situation of being invited to participate in recreational activities that would constitute immediate suicide for their species. The children's casual demeanor, their obvious comfort in an environment that was slowly overwhelming Zephyrian protective equipment, shattered the last remnants of the aliens' confidence in their technological superiority. The tactical withdrawal became a rout when the children began actively swimming toward the patrol. Not attacking, not threatening, simply approaching with the friendly curiosity characteristic of their species. The Zephyrian soldiers, encased in environmental suits that were failing rapidly in the thermal environment, fled from what appeared to be an assault by juvenile amphibious predators. 3 soldiers fell into sulfur pits during the retreat, geological features that Emma and her friends instinctively avoided, but that were invisible to alien sensors calibrated for different atmospheric conditions. The children attempted to render assistance, calling out warnings and directions for safe extraction, but their help was interpreted as psychological warfare designed to prolong enemy suffering. Commander Ralvin faced the most humiliating military report in Zephyrian history. His occupation force was being systematically defeated by human children using environmental hazards as weapons. The casualties weren't from advanced technology or superior firepower, but from the fundamental incompatibility between Zephyrian physiology and conditions that these juvenile humans considered recreational. Pride demanded escalation. Ralvin contacted the war fleet and requested immediate deployment of the Thermal Guard, Zephyrian elite forces equipped with military-grade environmental suits designed for combat operations in extreme conditions. If regular soldiers couldn't handle a handful of children, the Empire's finest warriors would demonstrate proper conquest procedures. War Minister Velter himself arrived aboard the dreadnought Crystalline Fury, bringing 500 Thermal Guard troopers and his personal reputation for successful planetary pacification. His presence was intended to send a clear message. The Zephyrian Empire would not be humiliated by primitive resistance from a non-spacefaring world. The Thermal Guard represented the pinnacle of Zephyrian military evolution. Their environmental suits incorporated technologies developed across 3 millennia of expansion, capable of operating in vacuum conditions, toxic atmospheres, and temperature extremes that would instantly kill unprotected organic life. They had conquered worlds dominated by acid rain, planets with surface temperatures exceeding 200 degrees, and moons where the atmosphere consisted entirely of corrosive gases. Earth should have been a simple training exercise. Emma Chen watched the new arrivals through binoculars borrowed from the research facility's wildlife observation equipment. The enhanced environmental suits were immediately obvious, their bulk and complexity suggesting capabilities far beyond the previous occupation force. She understood, with the tactical instinct that Earth's environment had bred into her species, that the game had changed. "They brought bigger robots," she reported to the other children during their evening meeting in the lava tube network. "The new ones look harder to break." Marcus studied the intelligence Emma had gathered, comparing the aliens' equipment specifications with his knowledge of local geological conditions. "They're still using the same base camp, in the crater." Dimitri's eyes lit up with the expression he typically wore when contemplating particularly interesting chemical reactions. Mom's seismic readings show increased activity in that area. The mountain's been restless lately. Keiko and Akira exchanged glances with the wordless communication that twins sometimes develop. The pressure readings have been weird all week, Keiko added, like something's building up underground. Emma absorbed this information and began formulating plans with the natural strategic thinking that humans develop when survival depends on understanding their environment better than anything trying to harm them. So they brought better soldiers, but they're still setting up camp in the wrong place. Not wrong, Marcus corrected with scientific precision. Dangerous. There's a difference. The Thermal Guard's first operation was intended as a demonstration of overwhelming force. Elite Squad Alpha, led by War Captain Thelvar, would secure the valley region adjacent to the research facility, establishing a forward operating base that would serve as a staging area for the complete pacification of human resistance. The valley appeared ideal for military purposes: relatively flat terrain, good visibility, multiple approach routes, and environmental readings that, while challenging, remained within operational parameters for their enhanced equipment. Zephyrian geological surveys indicated stable ground conditions with minimal seismic activity. These surveys failed to account for Earth's dynamic geology and the recent precipitation that had destabilized the soil composition. What appeared solid to alien sensors was actually a landslide waiting for a trigger. Keiko Nakamura, whose atmospheric scientist parents had taught her to read pressure differentials like other children read picture books, recognized the signs immediately. The air pressure variations, the subtle changes in ground moisture, the way sound carried differently through the valley, all indicated geological instability that would be invisible to individuals not raised in earthquake country. "The whole valley's going to slide if anything disturbs it," she reported to the resistance group. "Dad showed me pictures of what happened after the big earthquake 3 years ago. Same conditions." Emma studied the valley through her binoculars, watching the Thermal Guard establish their forward base with methodical precision. "Can we make it slide on purpose?" Dmitri nodded enthusiastically. "Easy. Just need to find the right pressure point and add some water. The rain last week did most of the work already." The controlled landslide that followed would be studied by military academies across the galaxy as an example of indigenous tactical superiority. Using nothing more sophisticated than redirected rainwater and a comprehensive understanding of local geological conditions, 5 human children triggered a mass soil displacement that neutralized an entire company of elite alien soldiers. The Thermal Guard found themselves buried under thousands of tons of mud and rock, their advanced environmental suits providing perfect protection from an attack that originated from the ground beneath their feet. No weapons were fired, no technology was deployed, no violence was committed. The mountain simply moved, guided by children who understood that sometimes the best strategy is to let the environment fight for you. War Captain Thelvar's emergency transmission crackled through layers of geological debris. "Command, Elite Squad Alpha is requesting immediate extraction. We have been. The terrain has become unstable. The local geography appears to be mobile." War Minister Velter stared at the tactical display showing the location where his finest soldiers had simply vanished beneath a rearranged landscape. "Explain mobile geography, War Captain." "The ground moved, War Minister. Without warning, without apparent cause, the entire valley floor shifted position. Our geological surveys indicated stable conditions." "Are you suggesting that the planet itself is resisting our occupation?" The pause that followed would become legendary in Zephyrian military communications. "War Minister, I am suggesting that we may have underestimated the environmental challenges of this world." While the Thermal Guard struggled with extraction operations, Dmitry Petrov was making a discovery that would change the tactical situation dramatically. His exploration of the volcanic tube system had revealed something that made his volcanologist mother's research suddenly, terrifyingly relevant. The Zephyrian base camp was built directly over an active magma chamber. The crater they had selected for its defensive advantages was not dormant. as their surveys had indicated. It was simply in a quiet phase, building pressure for what human geologists would classify as a minor eruption, the kind of event that occurred every few years and prompted nothing more than increased tourism to witness the spectacular but harmless displays of natural pyrotechnics. To the Zephyrians, whose silicon-based physiology was optimized for cold, low-energy environments, even a minor volcanic eruption represented an extinction-level event. Emma, Dimitri's voice carried the excitement of someone who had just solved a complex puzzle. Remember how they picked that spot because they thought it was safe. They built their whole base on top of what's basically a really big firecracker. Emma's tactical understanding immediately grasped the implications. How big a firecracker? Not big enough to hurt anyone who knows what to expect. Big enough to make their fancy suits stop working permanently. The children's final operation required no sabotage, no infiltration, no complex planning. They simply had to wait for the mountain to follow its natural schedule, and then ensure that their enemies were in the worst possible position when it happened. The eruption began at 3:17 a.m. local time, with a gentle rumbling that local residents recognized as Mount Rainier's way of clearing its throat. The initial seismic activity registered magnitude 3.2 on human monitoring equipment, strong enough to notice, mild enough that most locals slept through it. In the Zephyrian base camp, the tremors triggered emergency protocols as their geological monitoring systems registered what appeared to be a massive seismic event. Temperature sensors began climbing rapidly as superheated gases vented through fissures that opened in the crater floor. The volcanic emissions, harmless to Earth-adapted life forms, created atmospheric conditions that overwhelmed alien life support systems within minutes. Commander Ralvin's evacuation order came too late. The thermal guard found their advanced environmental suits failing catastrophically as volcanic gases infiltrated their filtration systems. The temperature spike, while modest by volcanic standards, exceeded the thermal protection capabilities of even their most sophisticated equipment. Emma Chen, awakened by the familiar sounds of minor volcanic activity, looked out her bedroom window to see the alien base camp erupting into chaos. Soldiers in bulky environmental suits stumbled through clouds of sulfurous gas, their movements becoming increasingly erratic as their life support systems failed. "Mom," Emma called to Dr. Chen, who was already monitoring the situation from the facility's emergency command center. "The aliens are in trouble. They're going to get hurt if they stay there." Sarah Chen faced a decision that would define humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. The beings outside were part of an invasion force that had attempted to conquer her world and imprison her people. They represented a technological superiority that could subjugate humanity for generations. By any strategic calculation, allowing them to suffer the consequences of their poor tactical decisions would benefit Earth's long-term security. They were also clearly dying. "Emma, stay inside. I'm going to help them. I'm coming with you. I know the safe paths." Sarah looked at her 12-year-old daughter, who had spent the past week systematically outmaneuvering an alien military force using nothing but environmental knowledge and tactical creativity. "Okay, but you follow my lead, and if I say run, you run." The rescue operation that followed would be preserved in both human and Zephyrian historical records as the moment that changed everything. Dr. Sarah Chen and her daughter Emma, accompanied by the other children from the research facility, ventured into conditions that were slowly killing an elite alien military force and began systematically evacuating enemy soldiers to safety. Emma led the way through the volcanic emissions, her unprotected human physiology completely unaffected by gases that were overwhelming alien life support technology. She moved through the chaos with casual confidence, calling out instructions to alien soldiers who could barely see through the sulfurous clouds. "This way. Stay low and follow my voice. Don't try to run, just walk steadily. The gas is heavier near the ground, so keep your heads up," warned Minister Velter, his crystalline form beginning to crack under thermal stress, found himself being guided to safety by a small human child who treated the volcanic eruption like a minor inconvenience. His most advanced environmental suit was failing catastrophically, while this primitive organic being moved through the same conditions without any protection at all. "Human child," he managed to communicate through his suit's failing translation system. "Why are you helping us?" Emma looked up at the alien war leader with the honest confusion that only children can manage. "Because you need help. Duh." The simplicity of her response shattered something fundamental in Velter's understanding of warfare, conquest, and the nature of intelligent species. This was not the behavior of a defeated population seeking mercy, nor the calculated generosity of victors claiming moral superiority. This was simply a child helping other beings in distress, because that was what children did. The evacuation continued for 6 hours as the mountain vented its accumulated pressure through displays of natural beauty that humans found spectacular and aliens found apocalyptic. Emma and the other children guided hundreds of Zephyrian soldiers to safety zones, provided emergency shelter in the research facility, and shared their food supplies with beings who had come to conquer their world. As dawn broke over the Pacific Northwest, War Minister Velter stood in the research facility's observation deck, looking out at a landscape that sparkled with fresh volcanic glass and steamed with residual thermal activity. His invasion force had been systematically defeated by children, who then risked their lives to save their defeated enemies from an environment that had become temporarily uninhabitable for alien physiology. Commander Ralvin approached with his final tactical assessment. "War Minister, casualty reports are complete. 14 soldiers lost to environmental factors, 43 requiring medical evacuation due to equipment failure, remainder suffering various degrees of atmospheric poisoning and thermal stress. And human casualties, Commander? None reported, War Minister. The humans appear completely unaffected by conditions that nearly destroyed our occupation force." Velter processed this information while watching Emma Chen play in a sulfur pool that still registered as chemically toxic to his sensors. The child splashed happily in water that would have dissolved Zephyrian respiratory systems, her laughter carrying across the post-eruption landscape like a celebration of life's triumph over adversity. "Commander, prepare the fleet for immediate departure." "War Minister, our mission parameters call for complete planetary pacification. We have suffered tactical setbacks, but the human population remains numerically inferior to our remaining forces." Velter's crystalline form flickered with what his species expressed as profound contemplation. "Commander, we cannot conquer a species whose children treat our weapons as toys and our fears as games. We came here believing we faced a primitive race that had exaggerated their world's dangers to appear more threatening than they actually were." He gestured toward the window, where human children were already exploring the new geological formations created by the volcanic activity. "We were correct about the exaggeration, Commander. They did not exaggerate their world's dangers, they understated them. More importantly, they understated their own capabilities." "War Minister, I do not understand." "These humans do not survive despite their environment, Commander. They thrive because of it. Every challenge their world presence makes them stronger, more adaptable, more dangerous. We brought advanced technology to overwhelm primitive resistance. They brought children who weaponized the very ground beneath our feet." Velter's final transmission to the Galactic Council would be remembered as one of the most significant military communications in recorded history. Classification revision required immediately. Earth designation, Deathworld Class 12. Inhabitants demonstrate supernatural adaptation to hostile conditions. Special notation: human juveniles exhibit combat capabilities exceeding adult populations of most known species. Under no circumstances should this world be engaged militarily during natural disaster seasons, which appear to be continuous. Recommendation: immediate reclassification to extinction risk if engaged in hostilities. The Zephyrian fleet departed Earth system 12 hours later, leaving behind only a deep space communication buoy that would broadcast a warning to all galactic shipping. Danger. Inhabited Deathworld. Approach with extreme caution. Local population demonstrates environmental weaponization capabilities. Children particularly dangerous. In the research facility's cafeteria, Emma Chen helped serve lunch to the alien soldiers who had remained behind due to medical needs. She chatted happily with beings who had come to conquer her world, sharing stories about her favorite swimming holes and asking questions about their crystal-based biology with the innocent curiosity that characterized her species. Dr. Sarah Chen received a priority communication from the Kethri delegation, transmitted through diplomatic channels that bypassed Zephyrian military censorship. Dr. Chen, the ancient alien's voice carried harmonics that suggested both respect and something approaching awe. We have monitored the recent events on your world with great interest. Our species abstained from the original classification vote because we had studied your historical records. What did you find in our records that made you abstain? Your species survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and multiple extinction events. Yet during these survival periods, you still managed to develop art, music, mathematics, and compassion. We found this combination of lethality and creativity unprecedented. Sarah looked out at her daughter, who was teaching a group of alien soldiers how to identify safe thermal pools by their mineral content. And now we understand that your children's performance was not exceptional. It was simply predictable. Did the Zephyrians really believe that descendants of Ice Age survivors would be less formidable than their ancestors? Emma, overhearing the conversation, looked up from her impromptu geology lesson. Mom, what's formidable mean? Sarah Chen, looking at her daughter who had just defeated an alien invasion using playground tactics, smiled with the complex mixture of pride and terror that only parents can understand. It means impressive in a scary way, sweetheart. Emma's face lit up with delight. Oh, cool. Can we go check out those new hot springs the earthquakes made? I want to see if they're good for swimming. The final galactic news broadcast updating Earth's threat assessment would echo through space for centuries. Warning to all spacefaring species. Earth's designation as a death world refers not only to its environment, but to the terrifying adaptability of its inhabitants. Human children, in particular, demonstrate the ability to weaponize their own habitat with devastating effectiveness. Recent military engagement resulted in complete tactical failure against juvenile human resistance. Approach with extreme caution, or preferably, not at all. Note: classification review pending upgrade to civilization-ending threat, pending further analysis of adult human capabilities. In the years that followed, Earth would become the galaxy's most feared legend and most sought-after ally. The story of the Zephyrian invasion, defeated not by advanced weapons or superior numbers, but by children who turned a volcanic eruption into a rescue operation, would be told across the galaxy as both warning and inspiration. And in a research facility perched on the edge of an active volcano, human children continued to play in conditions that would terrify the galaxy's greatest warriors, blissfully unaware that they had just redefined the cosmic understanding of what it meant to be truly dangerous. The universe had learned a fundamental truth about humanity. We are not remarkable despite the hostility of our world. We are remarkable because of it. Every challenge Earth threw at us made us stronger, more creative, more adaptable. We did not conquer our environment. We became one with it, learning to dance with disaster and find joy in conditions that would break other species. And our children, raised in that dance, had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Warriors who fought with compassion, survivors who saved their enemies, and living proof that the most dangerous species in the universe was also the most unexpectedly kind. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.